and I'm Megan.
And we are Sister Goals. Today we are episode 2, and we are going to start our challenge this week with our Rory Gilmore book challenge. And in this episode, we're going to be covering the first 5 books that we have read. And from there, we're going to just see how each of our point of views have changed while reading and talking about the books. And you guys are coming to join us.
Thank you. So first of all, we just wanted to talk really quickly about how we get the books that we read. So there are a couple of options. You're going to find that we are not the type that are going to just buy a ton of books. We actually use different options. So I really like the Libby app. I'm a very visual person, so your local library might have this, and it is just an awesome resource, completely free. Becca and I can listen to audiobooks through the Libby app and also check out local books through our library. Sometimes there's a hold, but we have found it has been very, very useful in getting our books. So we just wanted to do a shout out to the Libby app. And then also we've used Audible, we've purchased books off Amazon, we've done other things as well. Becca, do you have anything else you wanted to share?
Yeah, no, just, usually most of the time we always start looking at the Libby app and seeing if that has it available. And then if not, then we move outward from there. Local bookshops. I'm a particular to auto recordings of the novels. It just makes my life a little bit easier.
And that counts. That always counts. So we are like, read however you need to read, listen to it, look at it, do whatever you've got to do. That all counts for us. So definitely. So we're going to get into our first 5 books today. The first book that we read was A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. And this book is a semi-autobiographical account of the author, and it follows a young girl, Francie, as she grows up in Brooklyn, New York through the beginning of the 20th century. So it's kind of a historical timepiece as well. Becca, what do you think about it?
I loved this book. When I would tell people, I recommended it to quite a few people. And the way that I would help describe it to someone is it's just about everyday life. And it almost reminded me of, if you liked Anna Green Gables growing up, it reminded me of like Anna Green Gables, but in a city life.
In Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn. But the way the story was written was that way. And I absolutely loved that aspect of it. And it really just allowed you to get to know and sympathize with the character and kind of get to understand their family and lifestyles.
And I think you guys will find out that I love to know what happens to the characters. So I love these epic family novels that you can just trace their entire life from the beginning through. And so again, I would also recommend this book for that reason. It's just it's a historical family timepiece, and I love those books, so we would both recommend it. Next, we're going to talk about Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, and this book follows Elizabeth Bennet as she kind of navigates her way through society and the tiers and level of aristocracy in the past. So I think most people know Jane Austen, her genre, what she writes about. What did you think about it, Becca?
So for myself, I have actually watched a lot of Pride and Prejudice movies. So blockbuster films, with Keira Knightley. But my favorite, of course, is the BBC version of Pride and Prejudice. And I have watched that many times. And it is a comfort watch for me, and I absolutely love it. I have never read the book. This was my first time reading the novel. So as a lot of, books that go to movies and genres, I would say if it was following the blockbuster movies, it is way more detailed than all of those. If we're talking the BBC version, which is a lot more detailed, it is very similar to the BBC version. But I would say it just goes in a little bit more depth. And I would say it describes some of the younger sisters a little bit more clearly than I think that can be portrayed on video, which I really appreciated. And I'm not going to give it away in case people want to watch it, or read it. But at the ending, I felt it gave you even more of the sisters' histories past the time that, the movies show. So you get to learn even more about the sisters and how once everything has ended, what's happening to them, which kind of, I enjoyed that aspect, knowing what was happening, after the movies had cut off.
Yes, and I think you're gonna find, as if anyone's interested in joining us with this Rory Gilmore book challenge, you will hear us reference the movies a lot because so many books on this list are just classics and greats, and they've been turned into movies. And we often will compare and decide which one we like more than the other, and it always gives us a frame of reference for that as well. So for me personally, I'm going to I am not a Jane Austen fan, which is horrible, I know, as a reader and an English major, but I'm just going to put that out there. So it wasn't my cup of tea, but I've actually, will put it in the comments. There's another book that we've read, which has done a more up close and personal take on this in the more recent times, which I'll put that in the links. But unfortunately, Jane Austen is not my jam, and I'm really sorry because I know that's going to offend a lot of people, but that's where I'm at. So yes, Becca.
On a side note of that, everyone, I never knew she didn't like Jane Austen. And do you know how much I've been watching Pride and Prejudice, all these things, and she has just sat through it. Yeah. She is such a trooper. This is the first time she admitted to me that she does not like Jane Austen. And I was literally shocked, but it's kind of exciting to know. And there are other Jane Austen books in this reading list, I believe, that when we were looking through, there are more. So it'll be interesting to see if she'll like a different one or whatnot. But yeah, it was a shock to find out she really didn't like Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice. I was like, I thought she liked it.
It's so weird. It's so taboo. I feel like I can't say it, but I said it and now it's out there. So that's that.
There you go.
Yep. So that was our second one. The third one we read, a new author for me. I've never read a book by this author, was Cujo by Stephen King. So this is just one of those crazy psychological thrillers. I mean, just whoo. And it's Stephen King. So what did you think, Becca?
So I have never watched anything. I know there's been movies based off his novels as well. I have not watched anything and I've not read anything of his. So it was very exciting to go into a book that I really knew. People had told me that he has some really intense books, but I don't know anything other than that. Mm-hmm. So going into it, I was very open-minded, which was kind of, I think, a positive of this book. I thought it was really good. It was intense, but it was good. So it was a little challenging at times reading some of the interaction between the character who is a child in this book. I think that's just, I have had troubles I've noticed since I've become a mother. Yeah. That sometimes children in books, if there is a stressful situation, it can be very challenging for me personally to read about that or watch about it. But even with that being said, that is in this book, it is a great book and it was very easy to read.
Yes, I would agree. It's one of those books that I really like that I did not think I was going to like. I guess I've steered clear of Stephen King purposely just because I'm not big into horror or psychological thrillers per se, but I was surprised that I like this book, and I would recommend it to people with just a little caveat, just a little side note, it's intense. So I would recommend it. I tried watching the movie. I got about 45 minutes in, and I ran into the same issue that Becca talked about, where there is a big part of this movie has a child, and it was hard to couldn't get past. that in the movie. I was like, once it got to that point, I was like, and we're done. So, but I would recommend it. It's a great read. Definitely go for it. So we are also going to talk about the book Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. What do you think, Becca?
This one is a classic. It was really hard for me. I thought there were parts that were good, but overall, I would say it was not my favorite book at all. I think there was a lot of sections that were just, I think it's called monologuing, one person, and it would be like 20 pages of this guy describing one room.
Yeah, that happened.
It was a lot. And so when I'm trying, so my normal books that I find interesting are fantasy fiction, historical fiction, you know, and I'm reading this like classic novel where he is literally talking about a room for 20 pages. It is quite challenging. And I think I talked to my grandma about it when we were reading it. And I think I just basically said to her, well, once you get 100 pages in, it's okay. And it was like, once you got 100 pages into the book, then it moved more freely and then it was more interesting to read. But because it took so long to get in, it's not one that I would recommend necessarily. But it's interesting. That's all.
And I loved it. I love this book. I want to read it again, and I want to read it again. I feel like that's the hallmark of a classic, that you could just get into all these layers. I feel like if I read it 10 more times, I would find out more, and I loved it. So I definitely, you got to get through some of it, but the plot, the characters, the twist, it's just, it was exciting to me, and I was really surprised by how much I liked it. And I definitely will read it again. I think like it will come back in, and I will discover so much more through it. It's definitely one of those onion books with layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of depth to it. So yes, once you get past the first 100 pages.
Just takes a second.
All right, and then the last one we're going to talk about today is by Henry James. Becca, what do you think?
Ooh, we should have mixed these books around, because now people are gonna be like, she doesn't like it. I didn't like it. To be very honest, if I recall from when we did our book club on it, when was it written? Was it like early 19?
So it's about early 1900s. We've got a flirtatious young lady named Daisy Miller who starts getting pursued by a young man named Winterbourne.
It just was so challenging for me in this book because they kept judging her, Daisy Miller, the main character, because she was talking to another man, or she was seen riding in a carriage with a man, or listening to music with a man, but didn't have her, gosh, what did they call it in those days? Like the person that stayed right next to them. Say it again.
Chaperone.
Yes. Mm-hmm. She didn't have her chaperone with her. And then the society, when they were in Switzerland, where part of this book takes place, they just judged her constantly. And I think it's just because we're in modern day, I just found it like, oh my gosh, you have got to be kidding me. And so it just wasn't my favorite book. And then it just had a very rushed ending, which I felt was kind of surprising compared to how much detail he was giving throughout the rest of the novel. But yeah, what did you think, Meg?
I mean, I agree. I think as we're going through these lists and we go through what are so-called classics written by men at the beginning of, you know, the 18th, 19th, 20th century, like being women in this modern time, it's just going to be really hard for us sometimes to connect with some of those characters. And that I think that's just what we're running into here. So I completely agree. It was not my favorite book. So unfortunately, we're not going to end this book review on a high note, but again, just to recap, first 5 books that we read, we had A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. We had Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, Cujo by Stephen King, Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, and Daisy Miller by Henry James. So you kind of get our take on it. We've got more coming up for you. Please like, subscribe, and share this video.
And also, guys, if you have read any of these books and you share different viewpoints or different ideas of what you took away from it, please comment down below and let us know. We'd love to hear about it.
Yes, let us know, or maybe have some other interpretations that we could take with us and keep in mind for the next time.
Yeah, maybe I won't be so hurt by some of the thought processes. Okay, everyone. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. Bye.
Bye.